Like many of you, I have been talking about and thinking about AI quite a bit. Um, but one of the things that I think is really important that we not forget about is who we are as human beings and what it means to be a human first leader. When Wise Hire started over 10 years ago, we started with live exports incorporated right into our solution. And it was because we understood how important and how critical it was, especially for small and growing business leaders and owners, to have access to that human expertise. And I think we're at another inflection point now where it's a lot about AI, but we don't want to forget about what it is to be humans in this era. And I think even more importantly, to be human first leaders in this era. So I'm really excited to have Paul Wolfe with me today. Paul Wolfe is the author of Human Beings First. We're going to talk a little bit about this book. And actually, for all of the live attendees on the call, you will be getting a free Kindle version of the book. So at the end of the webinar, we'll share some details there. But I had the great pleasure of getting to know Paul when I was at Indeed. I really saw him really lean into those human first leadership principles and empathy during some pretty challenging times around the pandemic. And so when he wrote this book, obviously the book is very engaging and there's a lot of great insight, but I also knew that he walked the walk in addition to kind of like being able to talk about it. So very excited to have you here, Paul. Why don't you like give a little bit of context about your background and kind of what led you to write this book?
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Carmen. It is always a good day when I get to spend time chatting with you. I appreciate it. And if anybody can hear my dogs barking in the background, I apologize. They're unhappy with me right now. So I've spent 20-ish years in HR leadership roles at companies like Match, Conde Nast, and Indeed. Indeed is my last kind of operating gig for about 8 years, helping the company grow from 1,000 to 12,000 people. And like all of us lived through the pandemic while working full time. And it wasn't work from home. It was this forced thing with economic uncertainty, a pandemic that we had never experienced before, social injustice, and just we had in the US a contentious presidential election going on. And so I I went to I did like a leadership offsite with a coach that I've used before, and her name is Erin Weed, and she's phenomenal. She takes you through this process called the dig, which is her way of getting to your like operating system, the core of who you are. And she distills you down to one word, and not in a mean way, but just like it was amazing to me that like we spent 8 hours together. She was asking questions, of course, being the HR person I am, I'm like, all of this is confidential, right? You're not going to use this against me at some point. She actually just wrote a book about the dig. And so my word was better, which I'm like, at first I was like, like I don't know what it would be, but I started my career in customer service and transitioned into HR, and they're both very similar. You're trying to make things better, you're trying to solve problems, you're trying to mediate. And so that was eye-opening to me. And then I had an idea for a book, which I still think I'm going to do, which is an HR coffee table book, the salacious one that like tells everything that, and I want to engage other CHROs, like tell me all the ridiculous stuff you've dealt with. So that's still in the back of my mind. My publisher knows about that. But as the pandemic started and we were all forced to be in boxes like we are here today, you got to see things that you didn't normally see. Paul Darcy was a colleague that we both worked with at Indeed. And I was on one day in a senior leadership team meeting and I saw this really interesting piece of art behind him. I had never seen it before because I'd always seen him in the office. And I was like, listening to the meeting, but I was chatting him like, who's the artist? Like, he sent me the link and all this information. And then a couple weeks later, I was doing a multi skip level conversation. It was a Friday afternoon with an HR coordinator. And she said to me, she goes, I'm at my parents' beach house because the whole family's getting together this weekend. But I did not want to reschedule this. Like, I'm like, it's good. Like, we'll make it short. Like, the beach sounds good. I'm ready for the beach now, although I'm in Columbus and it's like 46 degrees today. At least we don't have snow anymore.
Yeah.
And so I started that conversation with her and I asked my typical like questions, and we're getting into this conversation. I was learning about her. And there's this gentleman behind her clearly talking to her and trying to get her attention, but she had AirPods in. And her name was Christina. I said, Christina, I said, I think there's a gentleman behind you trying to get your attention. And she's like, and I can still hear her. She's like, Grandpa, I'm on with my boss's boss's boss. Like, and we're going, so like, let's bring Grandpa over. And so I started asking him questions about her. But like those two, among many other experiences during this forced work from home, were kind of, to me, the title of the book, Human Beings First. We're all human beings first. And it's interesting because I was watching a clip of Bill Clinton from like 1996, 1997 where he was talking about a scientist that they had at the White House, he and Hillary at the White House, who was studying the human genome. And the scientist made the comment that he was addressing a joint session of Congress. And in politics, not everybody always gets along. And he said, I'm just going to let this statement hang out there. He's like, this scientist said that take away the color, our gender, our nationality, whatever it may be, we are all 99.9% the same. Which, if you think
Mm,
about it, like human beings first, we're all human beings first, if you want to put it into a sentence. Before we're an employee, before we're an author, before we're a VP of marketing, before we're a brother, a sister, a spouse, whatever, like whatever title you are given or you give yourself, we are actually all the same. And in us, I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago and they're like, okay, like they had not read the book and they're like, tell me your 8-step process or whatever. I'm like, I don't have an 8-step process. I said, my book is simple and the emotions and behaviors that I talk about in the book are all emotions and behaviors we all can exhibit. We all can lean into
mm,
them. So there's nothing new to learn, nothing to invest in other than yourself and time. And so those two, like those moments of, okay, we're all human beings first. They're like, okay, I have a title. Like I need to go write a book now. And so I left Indeed at the beginning of 22, started writing the book, I joined the board of PayScale, a compensation company, and then the book came out in March of 23. So I'm kind of like close to my 3-year
you're
anniversary,
pretty smart.
and toying with a second edition that's got more data and research in it. But we just moved, so the move's taken priority over that. So long,
Yeah.
sorry, very long intro, but like
Yeah, no, I think that's so, and
that's how
it's,
we got to like this simple concept of we're all human beings first.
yeah, it is. It's simple, but I think it is true. And I think it's important for us to remember that. You mentioned that the book came out in March 2023. So this was kind of like right on the heels of the pandemic, but still very fresh in all of our minds. And I think it really, spoke about how the pandemic was really instrumental in some ways for us to really acknowledge that we were human beings first. Now we're kind of at this different type of inflection point where technology is accelerating. I am both very excited by AI and all of the ways that it can help us, and a little tired too, and also um, I talked about the fact that we are a human first company. Do you think that in this moment in time that the message of the book is still as relevant as it was kind of coming out of the pandemic?
I think it is. I think it's got relevance no matter what's going on, whether it's everybody's getting along in the world and AI, dial forward. I was going to say 10 years, 5 years. AI is there. It's happening. Yes, some people's jobs have changed. They've learned new skills. Like we've embraced it. We understand it. Everything's going well from an economic perspective. Like I still think that human connection and being like the thing I talk about a lot is to leaders, like you are human beings first as well. And I worked for GE for a year in a rotational program when it was Jack Welch's GE. So back in the heyday of the big conglomerate, like Crotonville was their leadership, like university for leaders. And I had the benefit of taking 4 classes there, one taught by Jack Welch himself. But I remember going to this leadership class and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And like you're taking copious notes. And now, like 30 years later, when I look back on it, like they were teaching me to be an imposter. Like it was like
Mm,
never let them see you sweat, like always
yeah.
have all the answers, control, control. And I'm like, that is like the last thing. So during the
Mhm.
pandemic, it was like all bets are off. Like nobody knew what was going on. Carmen, you probably remember we did weekly Q&As at Indeed.
Yeah.
We closed on March the 3rd. I got a lot of like questions and not so pleasant emails from engineering and product folks mainly, but other people. Why'd you close? Where's the data? Like there is no data. And like in this case, it was about protecting people. But I think even in good times or when there isn't some exterior thing or external force, but I always think there's always going to be an external force going on, like being able to simply be a human and view your employees before you view them as an employee as a human. And as an HR leader, I'm bad about that because I was like, I have 12,000 employees. Like there are
Mhm.
12,000 employees and we have to protect them all. And that's a true statement. But like then when you take it a layer deeper, there are 12,000 human beings going through this in 12,000 different ways.
Yeah.
And this is also where I got to like one size fits all is really one size breaks all. And now you can't customize everything, but you got to think about how people like to receive feedback. People like to be, applauded. I had somebody on my team at Indeed who hated public recognition. Hated.
Mhm.
She happened to be the first employee in Dublin. You'll know from that her name. I will not use her name. And like the SLT was over there, and it was like an anniversary of the Dublin office opening. And I'm like, I said to our CEO and CEO, I'm like, do not recognize publicly this person. And they're like, why not? She's amazing. She's like the backbone. I'm like, take her to lunch. Like, write her a note. Like, but like, and versus other people that like like public accolades, like to get recognized in public. And so I think that human first leadership is something hopefully that everybody, no matter you're a leader, you're a person, you're in a friendship or relationship, like you can take something away from it and make things a little bit better. And I go back to my dig word of better
Yeah.
is how can I, understand this person a little bit better? How can I understand if you take it, I won't get political, but if there is political divide in the
Mhm.
US right now. That's an external force that is weighing on businesses. And so, how can I sit down with somebody who has very different political views than me and view them as a human being and listen to them and ask questions respectfully to try and understand their perspective better? Because everyone's perspective is their reality. So, I think no matter what role you have or what's going on, I think this concept of we're all human beings first and human first leadership is still an important part of being a human.
Yeah, and what you allude to, you also mentioned this in your book. It's the difference between like the golden rule and the platinum rule, which is do unto others as you would have them, do unto you, versus treat others like not like how you want to be treated, but how they want to be treated, basically. And I think that's a really important sort of maybe elevated idea of how to think about human first leadership. There was also another quote in your book because I think one of the things it's important to think about too is like all of this sounds really nice and really lovely, but we've had this conversation and it's really kind of like the concept of why we wanted to do this webinar, which is that this actually also leads to better outcomes and better decision making. And we'll dig into that, but the first place I wanted to start is you have this quote in your book, and I'm going to read it. When employees feel their leader has their back, in turn, they will take care of their leader, their company, and each other. And that really stood out to me as being like part of the backbone of like why this is so important. Can you just share a little bit more there in terms of like what that potentially looks like and why you think it works that way?
Yeah, there's a Gallup poll that says, and I may misquote this because I'm bad with numbers, but 70% of employee engagement, and I don't like the engagement word because I think it's an HR word, but 70% of employee loyalty, or will walk over hot coals or run through a brick wall for you, is driven by their leader.
Mm,
And so knowing that I reported to the CEO at Indeed, but knowing that he had my back and he believed in me and he trusted me, what made my job easier, especially when it was like, okay, like early days of the pandemic, our CEO and COO said to me, you make the decisions. The overarching goal is health and safety. Like that's
yeah,
it. Just let us know what's going on. Like they were very good about it. The three of us talked like multiple times a day, but very good about you just go and do it. And they had my back and like I was going to have their back. And I would, you know, triple think things like from this person's perspective, because I knew them so well about what would they think about this decision or whatever the case may be. And I, was loyal to Indeed before that, but certainly more loyal. And that drove engagement for me during a really difficult period of time. And I think even if it's not a difficult period of time, like employees make a choice to work someplace, whether you're an enterprise business, a small or mid-sized business, or even, a 10 or 15 person, store, retail store in a smaller city, like hiring people and employing them is your biggest cost. Payroll is one of the biggest costs of any business, and in some cases, the biggest cost. And so, in losing somebody, that turnover, I think you don't always think about it. It's like, oh, I can hire somebody else, and I may be able to hire them at a little less money. But you also lose the productivity when they walk out the door, especially on smaller teams or smaller companies. Sometimes you have single points of failure. That person knows how to do X and nobody else does. And
Yeah.
X needs to happen every week. And that loss is significant to companies. And so employees have choices. They're going to choose where to work. They're going to choose what leader to work for. And I think that that is something we sometimes lose sight of. Now that the job market is a little weird, like it's been
Yeah.
weird. Weird's not a great word. It's not a scientific word. Our former chief economist said Indeed would not like that word since she's an economist. But the job market has been odd, and like the pendulum is swinging, and you never know what's going to come out of the jobs report every month. And so you may think, oh, they don't have a choice, but there's always something. If they really don't like it that much, maybe they're going to, like, you know what, I'm going to take a hit here, and I'm going to leave without another job. Now, my mom always told me you never leave one job without having another one lined up. I only did that once in my life, and it was a little scary, but it turned out okay. Um, but employees have a choice at the end of the day. And so I think that, those leaders that lean into and those companies that lead into a human first approach to their people and their culture are going to have better business results, are going to have less turnover, are going to have those leaders, are going to have people that will. I used to use this example analogy story about Nolan, who was our chief revenue officer at Indeed. Carmen and I both had the pleasure of working with him. He was such a human first leader and still is to this day that people would run through a brick wall for him
Yeah.
without like asking a second. There was not even a hesitation. I'll go do it. Like, I'll go do
Yeah.
it. And that's a proverbial brick wall. Like, I'm going to hit my quota. Like, I don't, like, I'll be up until 11:59 on the 30 whatever of whatever month, like, to hit this quota because this person believes in me and treats me well and takes care of us. And there is a lot that goes, like, a lot of that can be measured by turnover and engagement and productivity. But there is also this just, I feel comfortable and I feel
Yeah.
good and I want to stay here, which is subjective, but that is a big part of it. If you think about, I remember ages ago when I was at Match.com, we were moving out of an office that was kind of sterile, and we got a new CEO. And his comment to me was, I want the office to feel like my grandmother's house meets the 21st century. And at first I was like, I don't know that I get that. And then he and I like were having lunch one day and I'm like, help me understand this. He's like, my grandmother's house is a very comfortable place. And you think about your home, the art you have on the wall, the sofa you chose, whatever it may be, you've made your home comfortable, and you want, you want your role or the company you work for to be kind of that an extension of that comfortableness, that comfort that you can create for yourself by working with people you like and you trust and that trust you. And I think that's so important, and that is not measurable. But you get to the metrics of turnover and hiring and all the other things, and there is an impact, a financial impact to all of this for any size business.
Yeah, you know it when you feel it, right? Sometimes it's very intangible, but when you've experienced like those two kind of different
You just
situations.
like it's like
Yeah.
it's like it's like putting on a pair of jeans that you've had forever that just fit well and you're comfortable in, or like the chilly night. You guys in New York had the worst snowstorm that we did. We had a snowstorm like 19 inches a couple weeks ago, and it's like turn the fireplace on. My husband was
Yeah.
traveling. The dogs were quiet. I put on the fleece like sweats, got the blanket out, and I like just vegetated. And like, but that warm, like comfortable, easy feeling. It's easy. It doesn't require much of me to like make a connect, like to interact with you or whatever. And we all have those meetings where it's like you see, luckily I don't, like, my calendar's a little less busy these days, but like, when you're in back to backs, it's like I always look at it in the morning and I'm like, all right, the morning's going to be good because these are all great people.
Yeah.
Afternoon gets a little dicey because of this, and this. And like, you don't want this, and this. You
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
it's going to be easy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. Um, so in your book, you outline 8 practices. They are reflect, share, see, listen, care, connect, help, and protect. For the folks on the call, you obviously know these 8 practices. Do you have a favorite? And I guess, do you have a favorite, or if you were advising a busy business owner, like how would you tell them to start? Like, assuming that they've read the book and they've looked at all of the different things, how would you tell them to start to think about it?
I think my favorite is share more of yourself because that's easy and storytelling has been around for eons. It's how
Mm,
we pass down historical information, familial information, like genealogical, like all that stuff. So it's easy. It's something like as humans we do and we it's easy for most people. I think the for small and mid-sized business or any leaders, if you have a small team, big company, small company, whatever the case may be, I think it is care through action is always that's the care chapter, but care through action is kind of the principle of it. And it is this is where you need to get to know and understand your people a little bit better. But like the example I gave earlier of the first employee in Dublin and that she didn't like to get public, that's care through action. I knew that when I was going to like she did a phenomenal job on X. It was like, all right, I'm gonna, she did have a favorite chocolate that oddly, because I think Irish chocolate, European chocolate's better than US, but there was one made here in the US that she could not get there. It's like, all right, we're gonna get like 6 or 7 packs of that, pack it up, and I'm gonna put a handwritten note and we're gonna send it to her and like just let it happen. And like she gets it and like she pings me. She's like, "Oh my God!" And there's a picture of it. Like, I love the Andes mints. Is what she like. I love these and like the
yeah,
card. Thank you so much. And then her husband like was in the picture and like, oh, he's eating them. I don't want him to eat them all. And so it's like that is just as simple. It doesn't take a lot. Yes, it costs money to buy the mints and the postage or whatever the case may be, but a simple handwritten note to somebody
yeah,
in let's take a retail store that's got 10 or 15 employees in total and somebody who, worked a double shift because somebody like called in sick or had a family emergency, whatever, a simple handwritten note goes a long, long way.
it
The
really
other
does.
thing about it, and it's interesting because I talked about this at a company that I was speaking to a couple months ago, and I'm like, you also don't know who's going to see that note like their mother, their father, their significant other, a friend of theirs who may be thinking about applying for a job with this company, or who may be a consumer, like, oh, I should go try out that store or that local business because this is something that's I wish my boss would do that for me. Like there's a ripple effect to all of this as well. It's not just this one, and even if it is just the employee and you write a handwritten thank you note or a thank you note with a small gift card for a meal out because they worked late one night like even if it's just the employee, like that to some people is more than $1,000 raise or a $500 raise or a 25 cent an hour raise. And then you think that the husband sees it like, oh, like I wish my boss did that. Like maybe I should like think about working here. Or, somebody else sees it and they're like, oh, I was thinking about doing business with that law firm. Or, I was thinking about using that therapist and that therapist office. And like, this is so nice. Like that's going to make me do that. And so there's also that potential ripple effect as well. And I think care through action is like, yes, you have to get to know your people and understand how they want to be taken care of. Because again, the golden rule versus the platinum rule, just because if I'm sick, I don't necessarily want chicken soup. I want
Yeah.
X. Bad example, but you get the point. So you have to get to know them. There's got to be this connection. I think all of human first leadership, all of the 8 steps in it or principles in it are all tied to connections and understanding people a little bit better. And I think that's important. But those are my two, I guess,
Yeah,
favorites, if
care
you will.
through action and share more of yourself.
Yeah.
So on the share more of yourself, now obviously I know this story because I got to experience it, but would you be like willing to kind of share like what like there's a way that you shared something about yourself with Indeed and all 12,000 of us, and then
Yeah.
kind of the ripple effect that that had.
Yes,
Um,
yes. I'm happy to because I've already shared it with 12,000 people and it's in the book. So like it was so funny when I was turning in my manuscript to my publisher, my husband was also like rereading. I'm like, yeah, I need a second set of eyes. My publisher and editor and I used a co-writer. And so like I'm like, I need another set of eyes. And he got to this section of the book. I remember he texted me because his office was downstairs, my office was upstairs in our other house. He's like, "Are you sure you want to share this?" And it was just a screenshot. I'm like, "Yeah, like I've been like it's already done, like whatever."
yeah.
So um, yes, I'm fine sharing it. I will, the caveat, like the pre-warning to everybody listening on LinkedIn and on the Zoom call and whoever watches in the future is this is not my recommended example for everybody to share more of themselves. This is a very extreme example, but so pandemic was going on. We did weekly Q&As. There was also this weekly email that came from me that was called Paul's Weekly Email. Such an original name, but I had an amazing internal comms team that helped me put everything together. They did it all. I just looked at it. And oddly, it had this amazing, like, better than 80% open rate every
Oh,
week,
wow.
which is, when you get an email from a CHRO, nobody really wants to like, come on, but let's be realistic. And so, but it was a way, I think, and Carmen, you can attest or disagree, but it was a way that we communicated, but it kept you together and in the know about what was going
I
on
remember
because
those emails.
we
They were
were
good
all in
emails.
we
Yeah.
were all in 12,000 places versus being in offices. And so we tried to make it early on. It was about new mental health offerings and things like that. And then it turned into like, here's a new product that's coming out. Here's this program that's coming out. Here's that, and a little bit of everything, if you will. So it's kind of like a weekly newsletter. I had been diagnosed with OCD back in like 2005. I think it's been about 20 years. And my OCD typically was checking the oven, checking the iron, checking doors to make sure they're locked, kind of a typical example of how OCD manifests itself. Well, I didn't think about this until I got into it. Well, the pandemic, we weren't going anywhere. I didn't need to check anything because we were home 24/7. And my husband was home all the time too. So like if I needed something checked, he could check it for me. We have a routine. We've been together 30 years. He understands it. And so during the pandemic, I was talking to my doctor, my therapist, my meds didn't seem to be working because OCD does not go away just because I wasn't leaving the house. And so it started to manifest itself in other ways. And so if anybody has been on SSRIs or drugs for any mental health issue, you have to kind of wean off what you're on over a period of time and then step up to the dosage your doctor wants you to be on. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you have to do this process of weaning off and weaning back on. And it's a little bit of a pendulum. For some reason, I seem to be the big paper that CVS gives you when you pick up a prescription, like these may be the side effects. I seem to be the poster child for side effects. Like, I don't know
Oh,
why, but
wow.
like, and
Yeah.
so like for a period of time, we were doing like all this, trying these new drugs while everything else was going on and while I was showing up on Zoom, and Zoom fatigue was a thing. We all experienced it. Like all day long, I was talking to a camera with a light on and like in a room, and like I'd try and get out of the room every once in a while and go outside or whatever the case may be. And it was probably like in July or August of the summer of 2020, that somebody on my team had made a comment to me. One of the HR business partners said, "Hey, so and so was in a meeting with you the other day and they want to know if you're okay." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't like," and so then I got like a couple other pings about that. And then I started to realize that my own shit was making
Mhm.
people think that there was something wrong with me. And you're a leader at a company during the pandemic, people are going to think the worst. Like
Yes.
the wheels are falling off the bus, he's distracted, like whatever the case may be. And like, so my emails went out on Thursday morning. So on Wednesday, I would typically get the draft. I kind of looked through it. I maybe changed a word or two. Ashley Miller was my internal comms person who was phenomenal and like pretty quickly understood my voice and like how I like to do how I like to communicate. And I read it, and then I'm just like, I'm gonna add two paragraphs to it. So I added these two paragraphs that were about OCD and what I was going through, not really thinking much of it. Sent it to her. Hour or two later, she slapped me. She goes, "Looks fine." She goes, "Are you sure?" Similar question that my husband asked with the book.
Yeah.
"Are you sure you want to say this?" I'm like, and like it wasn't even a thought because like I was working for a boss who had my back, like, and a company that had my
Yeah.
back, and we were all kind of experiencing the same thing. And we had this really um to me, a breakthrough leadership offsite, but it was on Zoom in April of that year, where we were supposed to do like, talent review and succession planning, all that stuff. And I'm like, we can't do that. And so we did the simple thing about, are you leading or are you managing through the pandemic? And we all got stuck on the question, how are you doing? And it was a very emotional meeting with a senior team that was a majority men. And there were quivers in voices and tears in eyes and things like that. And so like, okay, like, so I said to Ashley, like, I'm good. And so, the next day was back-to-back Zooms, and I'm an inbox zero person. My husband has like 3,000 unread emails, and it gives me anxiety when I look at his phone, and missed calls and voicemails. I'm like, I don't know how you like live. And so like in the afternoon, I had like a 15-minute break. I'm like, all right, like let me go in and see like what's going on. And I opened my inbox and I had like 400 unread emails. And my first reaction was something happened to somebody and someone didn't call me. Like,
Yeah,
why? Like, and then I looked at the subject lines and saw Ari Paul's weekly email, and I'm like, oh, and you know this, Carmen, because you worked at Indeed. But my next reaction was we misspelled somebody's name. Someone's title was wrong. The location of an office, the name of an office was wrong, like that. We get a lot of that feedback all the time. And I'm like, oh God. Like, so then I start to open them. And like the first one was, I have OCD too. Here's what drugs I'm on. Like, let me know if you want to talk. And I'm like, part of me is like, I'm just in the mode of like working. And then it was like the next one was like, I have bipolar disorder. Here's what's going on with me. I have depression. And then I realized I'm like, this is all, I added those two paragraphs and this is all in response to that. And so like, I'm like, oh my gosh. Then I was like, I need to respond to all these people. So I did over time get back to all of them, but it was a very extreme, very, very extreme. I do not recommend this for everybody, but a very extreme personal story that I told. And it was prompted because I was concerned people thought something bad was going on with the
yeah,
business. And it was like a very enlightening moment, week, month, whatever you want to be. And then a couple days later, I was doing a focus group with some London-based employees, and I was getting ready to start, and a woman who worked there, who I knew, said, "Do you mind if I say something before we start?" I'm like, "No, go ahead. Like that's good." I'm like, "I have my four questions. This is easy. Like whatever." And she's like, "I need to say thank you." And I kind of like looked at her. I was like, what are you thanking my team for? I want to make sure the right person gets the thanks. Because that was, I mean, when you work at a company of 12,000 people and your team is like five or 600 people, typically somebody on your team did something that they're thanking you for. And I'm like, I'm not taking the credit for something I did not do because I didn't do a lot. Like I was just like, kind of like blocking and tackling most of the time. And she's like, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, no. She's like, your email. And she's like, it showed us. And she goes, I've talked to people about it. Like you put your pants on just like us. And I'm like, we all put our pants on the same way. Like it doesn't make a difference if you've got a fancy title or whatever the case may be, or you're in a big office or small office, or you don't have an office. Like again, we're all human beings first. We're all the same. Like what I'm going through, hundreds of other people told me they were going through, and there are probably a ton of others that were going through it that just didn't say anything, they didn't want to send another email. And so I think that's again, a very extreme example of sharing more of yourself and telling a story about something that's going on, and I'm going to disclose this to you, and like you do with it what you want. Now, I'm sure there are people behind the scenes and didn't send me an email that were making, maybe not so nice comments, but nobody like I did not get any of that from anybody that I talked to
yeah,
after that, and it just changed. People that I knew, I had created new and deeper connections with, and people that I didn't know, like a lot of those hundreds of emails I got were, yes, they were an employee of the company, but I did not know everybody. Like it were people, and I did respond to all of them. It probably took me like till December of that year to respond to all of them. But like there were notes back and forth, and like there were new connections I had that I had never had before, because of a simple email or a simple couple of sentences that were put in an email.
yeah. It was a pivotal email. I remember talking about it with others, who were, going through maybe not even through similar things, but just experience of going through the pandemic and trying to deal with your own mental health, right? Um, One of the other things I want to talk about, like something that we have talked about, here at Wise Hire, and I know it's a term that folks think about, is this idea of kind of wartime leadership versus sort of like peacetime leadership. And, when you think about wartime leadership, it's really about, it's about urgency, it's making hard decisions, it's pushing through. And I think a lot of people sort of feel like we are at a moment in time where we're in wartime leadership, whether it's economic uncertainty, whether it's the technological disruption. How do you think human first leadership can show up even in a tense environment, even when it is, really maybe difficult to lead, or we're in kind of like wartime leadership phase? Like how can we show up more as human first leaders?
I think leadership's leadership, whether it be wartime or peacetime or whatever the case may be. I think that's a core thing, and who you are as a human is is what it is. Like you're hardwired in a way you grew up with experiences. We all grew up differently and had different experiences, and that's formed our view of the world and how we react to people or how we talk to people or whatever the case may be. It's always telling to me. When I worked in Indeed, I still use this example. I was lucky to be the head of HR at Match.com, the dating company, and the head of HR at Indeed. And dating and interviewing or looking for somebody for a job are basically the same process, just a different outcome. And what I would always say to job seekers at Indeed when I was talking to them is if you see a flag, a yellow flag, maybe a not so bright green flag, a red flag, a pink flag in the process, whether it be dating or recruiting or interviewing, know that that's only going to get worse when you get more comfortable with each other. And so I think that goes for leadership. You can't just be human first during wartime and not during peacetime. And I think it depends on the situation. The HR example I will give you of human first leadership, and this is going to sound weird to people, and the people that I said it to thought it was weird. And I think a lot of them, like after the fact, like, okay, I appreciate that. The worst part of my job or any HR person's job is having to fire somebody, whether it be performance, not a fit, which I don't use as a reason to fire, but I still hear that, somebody did something egregious. It doesn't make a difference on the scale of like, seriousness. What the reason is I am about to say to somebody, I'm impacting your life financially right now and you don't have a job anymore. Like that's the worst. The way I knew that I was still a human and I could keep doing my job because I was still a human was the night before any of these conversations. I still didn't sleep well. I was not hungry at dinner. The whole morning was like, whenever it was, I'm like, oh God, this is all I could focus on. And I'd go in and I'd have that conversation knowing that I was impacting somebody negatively. And I would, you do your HR stuff, but like you have to do it in a way that kind of makes them feel that you're just not reading a script. I've seen and
Mhm.
heard HR people that are like reading a script and it's awful. I think so. My first thing was I'm going to tell them what's happening. And I'm like, do you want to stop the meeting and meet at another time to go through this? Because you likely will not remember a thing that I say in the next 1 minute to 59 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Because all is in your mind is I have a mortgage to pay. How am I going to tell my wife? Like, I need to find another job. What am I going to do? Like, that's what's going through your mind. And a lot of people are like I just want to get it over with. And so like I'd go through what I would needed to go through that was specific to them. I also, if somebody didn't have a 401k, I would not talk about the 401k stuff. Like you don't need to know about that. So it was tailored to what they needed to know. And at the end of it, I said, look, you're gonna have a million questions. Here's my cell number. You can text me. You have my email address and Paul Wolfe or whatever it was at Indeed.com. And I said, the thing you need to focus on now is you. I said, so you ping me with your questions. I'll get all your stuff answered. Like no question is too small, no question is stupid, but you need to think about you now. And so like spend the evening thinking about you, having the conversations you need to have. If you get back to me in a week, that's fine. Like we'll figure it out. The other thing I said to people, and this is the part that I think brings more of the human first into it, I said, look, you may not want it. You may not want it now. You may want it in a month or 3 weeks or whenever. I said, I'm happy to look at your resume. I'm happy
Mhm.
to do mock interviews with you if you want to do that. I'm also happy to I would say this to people that did not do something like egregious or almost illegal.
Yeah.
There's a scale that I would say, but like if there's a company that you're interested, if there's a job you're interested in, I'm connected to somebody there. I likely don't know them, but I'm happy to shoot them an email on LinkedIn, or if I do know them, I'm happy to ping them and say, hey, you should consider this resume. Like I'm happy to make that warm intro. And most people, you get through the conversation and they're like, they just want to get off the call. And like, you can't take it personally. And like, I would say better than 50, 60% would come back a couple days later, like, I appreciate what you said. Do you mind just scanning my resume and like giving me some feedback? Or I found this job at an IAC company because I worked for IAC for 10 years. Like, do you know? I said, I don't know that person, but like I know enough people there to get you to that person. So like I'm happy to do that. So like that's an example of I guess wartime or
Yeah.
the worst part of a leader's job, especially an HR leader's job, is that conversation and how you can add certain subtleties to it that make the conversation maybe not better, but like more bearable,
Yeah.
and less like sterile. Because I find a lot of like those conversations become very sterile because I'm concerned about, you got attorneys in your ear, like be careful what you say. And I get all that. And my job was to protect both the company and the employees. But at the end of the day, I'm impacting somebody negatively and they're a human. And if this were me, and this is more golden rule than platinum rule, especially because a lot of the people I had the conversation with I didn't really know, was I would want somebody to take heart with me if they were
Yes.
having this conversation with me.
Yes. And be clear.
Yeah.
I think the first time I had to do something like that, I kind of had memorized a script in my head and I probably sounded like a robot. Because I was very focused on myself as opposed to
Yes.
the other person
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
room. And
And
so
that's
there
like,
was,
look, it was my job. Like for a manager, somebody not in HR, it's not something that happens a lot. You do like, you're concerned about you, the company, like the employee, like, are they going to hit me? Like whatever. So like, I get that. And I think just as, because it was such a part of the job, it's like, okay, like this is how I'm going to approach these. Cause I hated it. Like it was,
yeah,
it's still to this day, it like makes me feel uncomfortable. And I haven't had to do it for 5 years now.
yeah, yeah.
Thank God.
So a lot of the people that work at Wise Hire, and I imagine a lot of the folks on the call are in industries that are very, client service oriented. They are, thinking about the customer experience. Um, when we think about human first leadership, and this will be, I'm just looking at the time. I know it's going to fly by. This is going to be my last question, and I'll open it up for
Okay.
Q&A from folks on the call. But when we think about human first leadership and kind of, this idea of just treating people as human beings and the impact that that has on your employees, do you think that that then has the ability to kind of trickle down into that customer service experience or that client service experience?
Absolutely. Like I think if you treat your employees well and they feel that they're comfortable and they want to be there and they want to do good, like, they're going to take it. And it's tough, like, especially customer service, whether it be a call center, face to face, like you are getting, because again, the first 10 years of my career, we're doing that for American Express and GE, you're getting people typically who are upset. They're going to yell and like you got to put it in your mind like they're not yelling at me. And I always funny, I was talking to some, it may have been a utility as we moved in and there was a discrepancy in the bill and I had gotten like the runaround and I finally got somebody and I'm like, look, I said, I may raise my voice. I apologize up front. It's nothing to do with you. I'm just frustrated at the situation. And the person was like really like, I understand, I got it. And like at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, like you're amazing. Thank you so much. Like I'm really sorry. Like it's fine. And so I think taking that perspective, like, okay, I don't know what kind of day this person had. They're walking into, a medical office, a dental office, a retail establishment. You don't know what's going on. And like something, triggers them in the store and they're irate and they're angry, just thinking about like, okay, this is a human. Like they may just, and look, at the end of the day, I'm not Pollyanna. They may just be a really mean human being. Like there are those people out there, but I still go to at their core, there's a reason for it. Something happened for that to happen because I don't think you're born that way. And so, okay, like, yeah, I'm gonna take it. Like, how can I help? What can I do? If you can't do anything, you can't do anything. It may not be puppy dogs and rainbows at the end of it, but I think that the more that you treat your employees and also employees lead, they mirror the behaviors of their leaders. And
Mm,
so like again, this doesn't have to be a leadership. My book is written for leaders, but it could be any human being reading it. Like, okay, how can I make this relationship better? How can I make what I think is going to be a tough interaction a little bit easier or better or more comfortable? They're more apt to do that because they're more loyal to the organization, loyal to you as their leader, and they want to represent the company, whatever that company is, well. And so I think there's the trickle down effect to this, and it becomes, it's not, you don't become homogenous because everybody is still different because they have different perspectives. But at the end of the day, it starts to form a culture of humanity, if you will, and
mm.
that can spill over into all facets of a business.
Yeah. If you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your
That's
customers.
right.
Yeah. Let's open it up for questions. I, of course, have more questions I can ask, but I want to give folks on the call an opportunity to ask Paul some questions. So he's obviously an expert in the area of human first leadership, but he's been the head of HR for many
Yeah.
years as well at some pretty sort of large organizations. So I think it's a good opportunity to ask questions, you might have in that sphere as well.
Who's going to be the brave first one?
I
It's
know,
always the
right?
first one that's hard.
And I did see that someone had asked specifically about the eight kind of practices,
Oh,
and we dropped that in the chat as well.
yes.
Any questions? I can keep going. Um, Here we go. Yeah, I always have a fair amount of questions I can ask. I'm going to ask our Charmin's question. How do you get senior leaders to be open to human first leadership?
I think displaying it to them. I'll go back to the senior leadership team meeting at Indeed, and we were supposed to do this like performance review thing. And I was said to Dave and Chris were our CEO and COO. And I'm like, I can't, one, I can't do 8 hours of virtual. We just can't. Like, there's too much else going on. And so my team and I came up with, there was a Harvard Business Review article about are you leading or are you managing through the pandemic? And we decided to start with how are you doing? Like a simple question. And that turned into 3.5 hours of like a therapy session. Now, mind you, that was wartime, to use
Yeah,
your wartime leadership, but I think showing it to them and helping them understand you a little bit better, sharing some of yourself or carrying through action and things that I talk about in the book will start to make them be interested, hopefully, in it. Now, it's not like I'm going to be mean to CFOs for a minute. If you can't show me on a chart that's up and to the right how this is going to impact. And I think there's ways you can bring research and data into that conversation about the impact it has financially to a company's bottom line. But I think it's exposing them to it is probably the first step of getting them to be open to it and asking questions to understand it better.
yeah. And by the way, being an imposter is hard work, it's tiring.
Oh my God.
And when you release that, and this is more for the individual but I think just it's going to be pervasive, I think, in so many ways.
Yep.
I want to address, Corey has an interesting question. So Corey says, I'm fairly new to HR and I have a chatty employee. I have talked to her, so I might be messing a little bit. I've talked to her several times about reducing, I'm guessing, like the amount of talking she's doing without much result. Thoughts here, Paul. What do you do?
I've lived in Corey's shoes before. I think it is. I think one is I recall this is a while ago, but one employee that would come to me. It was at Indeed, and everything was very like long. Like it's like okay, like I need the highlights. I need the cliff notes. I'm older, but we used to have cliff notes when I was in school. I could read the summarized version of a book and like then know enough about it to pass the test. Like I need the Cliff Notes version. And I finally gave her feedback one day. I said, look, I said, both of our times are important. And I want to hear, and a lot of hers was around, and I did learn about this, was about getting emotions out. And I think I was one of the first people in HR that had listened to her. And so once we got through that, it became because I said to her, I said, I just need the Cliff Note version. I need the 5 minute version. Like it's like I'm happy to catch up with you. And I would make a point of like having dinner with her when I was in their city or whatever and things like that. I think it's just giving feedback about how we're all busy, small business. There's a lot of balls people have in the air. Like let's stay focused. If you've got more, I'm willing to listen to it. But right now, can we just keep it, confined to this? I think if it's in a meeting like situation, I think agenda and coming back to the agenda and driving for results in meeting results is a way to do it. I'm going to be honest with you, Corey. There are some people that are just gonna like want to talk your ear off, and like you just have to find polite ways to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. I think I saw another question come down here from Estella. How can HR effectively lead organizational change without being perceived as just administration?
I think this one is, this is the age-old HR rub for everybody. Like, oh, I remember the Match.com CEO that talked about his grandmother's house meets the 21st century. My first meeting with him, he had never been a CEO before, was, oh, so you're the guy that hires and fires people for me. I'm like, that's like this much of my job. Like, let's talk about the rest of it. And over time, like, was he on the right when I left in a Match? No, but he was more towards the middle. And I think it's to me, just administration is, oh, you just need to get something done. I think in this case, like with organizational change or cultural change, it is here are the reasons why. Here's how we're going to measure. Here's data that shows these things need to change. And I think then you start to be perceived as more strategic. I think data, the devil's in the details, the devil's in the data. And so, and I think that's one of the challenges in HR because a lot of HR is just gray. There's not black and white. It's not like being an engineer. I remember so many conversations with engineers and they like think about things as ones and zeros. And I'm breaking this down to the most simplistic level. And a lot of like an HR, like an employee, just an employee being upset with their leader about something is not ones and zeros. You've got personalities, you've got innuendo, you've got different perspectives, you've got all that stuff, and your HR is tasked with like trying to sort this out for everybody and not knowing everything because nobody ever tells you everything. Like
Yeah.
that's after 20 years, like you never get the full story. You're making decisions based on not a full set of data. But I think the more that you can bring data into it and not just data saying, oh, we need to be better at this, but like we need to be better at this. And here are a few ways I think we could through behavioral change or whatever the case may be. And here's how we're going to measure the change. And if it doesn't work, like go back to the drawing board and come up with a different way. But if it does work and the data is showing that, then you are showing that you are strategic and you're being mindful about resources and people's time and things like that. But I always go back to data and transparency are your two friends in HR.
Yeah. Data and transparency are your two friends.
Yeah.
Any more questions? I will, we have about 5 minutes. If there are some additional questions that come in, feel free to continue to drop them in the chat. But I did just want to share with folks what they can expect for next steps. As a thank you for everyone who's on the call right now, you will receive a complimentary version of Paul's book, Human Beings First. So watch out for an email from us. You get an email from us with an Amazon code that you can use to actually get the book. It is great. I think it's like very straightforward. It's very practical. And I think it's also a good thing to just kind of like revisit maybe when you're kind of having like a challenging moment and to kind of think about how can I kind of like turn this ship around a bit. I also just wanted to let you know how to get in touch with either myself or Paul, the folks who advise hire. I have our number here. You can actually schedule a meeting. We will follow up with you with an email, and we'll have a separate email with like the recording and some information. But if you want to, talk to Paul, if you have a question for Paul, you can also go to his website. His link is very simply paulwolfe.com. There's a contact form there. He will, know that you are from the webinar, and you can continue to ask him any questions that you might have. Before we close, Paul, any kind of final thoughts from you or anything? Let me see. Like if someone on this call wanted to become a more human first leader starting now, this minute, what are 1 to 2 things they could do in the next week?
I think the first thing, and this goes to the golden rule, not the platinum rule, but think about how you would want to be treated. And so, like, it's like, okay, like when I go into term conversations, it's like, all right, like I would want somebody to care a little bit about me. And so I think that's it. And then I think it's just open up a little bit. Like I use the share more of
Mm,
yourself. I use a very extreme example, but like, you know, like if and not a good timing wise, but the example I'll give you is like, oh, my only child went off to college last week. Like,
mm.
and I'm feeling emptiness. I'm trying to figure out my husband and I or my wife and I are trying to figure out like what that means or whatever the case may be. Or, you adopted a new puppy. Like you can share little things about yourself that like, oh, like I have a dog. I was talking to somebody here in Columbus and I'm new to Columbus. My husband's family's here, so we have a good support system. But I made a comment about a so I was in a retail store about one of our dogs and like, oh my God. And then by the end, we had a 20-minute conversation and we were like both swiping on our phone like pictures of dogs. Like it's simple little things that you don't know like about somebody. It's like it's going to create a connection. And I think that's what this is all about is how do I create new and deeper connections with people?
Thank you so much, Paul. Everyone, I think you should read the book. I think you're going to have great insights. We have the chat, we have the Q&A, so if we missed anything, we can follow up with you. Thank you for your time and attention, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank WiseHire and thank everybody behind the scenes at WiseHire that made this possible. I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Human first.
Yes.
Right. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.